Coming up next on Another View, it's the Another View Poetry Slam. We have in our studio 3 nationally accomplished African-American poets, Tim Seibles, Remica Bingham, and Godchild. They are award-winning artists, and they use poetry and spoken word to express life, love, sex, revolution, peace, joy, sorrow, beauty, and hope. We'll talk with them about their talent, their message, and then we'll hear their works delivered by the poets themselves. A very special Another View program on poetry is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Happy Friday afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee, and I hope that you aren't too soggy out there in this rainy weather, but we've got some warm, wonderful conversation going on here in the studio, and we can't wait to share it with you. So early one morning, I go to my favorite coffee spot, and I see this man I know named Tim Seibles. And I mentally make a note that I really should ask him to be on Another View. After all, he is a National Book Awards finalist for his latest collection called Fast Animal. And I've heard him read some of his work in the past, and I thought he'd really be a good guest on the show. So I'm thinking all this while I'm ordering my coffee. And then we speak, and I leave, and I don't ask him. And then all of a sudden, he comes out of the restaurant, and he comes by my car, and he says, "You know, I've been meaning to talk to you about Another View." So clearly we were on the same page. Then we decided, well, first of all, we invited Tim to come. And hi, Tim, how are you? We're so happy that you're on the show today.
I'm delighted, Barbara.
And then we decided to invite some other African-American poets to join Tim today. They are Remica Bingham, an award-winning writer herself, and her latest book is called What We Ask of Flesh. Hi, Remica.
Hey, how are you?
Great. Thank you. And Godchild, an award-winning spoken word artist from right here in Norfolk, who has traveled the East Coast in search of crowds, inspiration, and new places to share his body of work. How you doing, Godchild?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
That's good. I'm fine. So I am so excited that you all are here, and I'm going to have to make a confession right off the top. I can't believe I'm actually saying this on radio, but I am, this is me personally, intellectually intimidated by poetry.
Now.
And it has. In the past, it has frightened me because I just kind of didn't get it from reading it on the page. But when I hear it read, it has a completely different meaning and feeling for me. So you say don't say that, Tim. Why?
No, I said don't be afraid.
Okay.
No, I think a lot of people are nervous about poetry, mostly because of the way it was taught in school. A lot of teachers themselves did not love poetry, and they taught it in such a way that others would not love it. And so they would highlight things like symbolism, and nothing is ever literal. You always have to create an idea about the poems. Like the poems, at least the ones that I care about, they say what they mean. Now, they may mean more than that, but they at least say what they mean. And I think when people understand that, poetry opens up to everybody.
And, you know, I think that's part of what it is, because when you read the words and you're looking for this deep thing and you go, I don't get it. and you see other people saying, I get it. Why poetry, Remica, as opposed to any other form of writing?
That's a great question. I think for some of the reasons that Tim just pointed out, for me, it's very direct. Especially the contemporary poets that I came to love really spoke to some of my experiences or some of the experiences of people around me. It's one of the only art forms where you can have information about what's going on around you in the moment. So these snapshots, these bite-sized photographs, these images of something that happens in the moment. And I was always desperately interested in the way that words can capture and convey how others feel, how others see things. And that's what poetry does for me. It kind of conveys what I'm seeing in the exact moment in the way that I try to process that.
Godchild, spoken word is poetry.
Yes. Yes, it's always see it as because I started out rapping. I've been rapping since I was like 9 years old, and poetry was always there. But it's like a kind of like a hybrid.
I was going to ask you because we had this discussion in our production meeting. What is the difference between rap, hip hop, and spoken word?
Well, rap is an expression of hip hop. One of the many elements. Hip hop is a culture. And you said the last one
and how that relates to spoken word. What's the difference? I say it's the expression and the culture at the same time. It's like the MC is like the mouthpiece of hip hop, and like now it's like it's so misplaced now because you don't get people that really get into the art of rhyming, of lyrics. Because I wanted people to hear my words. So the beat kind of got in the way for me. So I would go. So it is spoken word is without music.
Yes.
And it is the words and it is the rhythm of the words that you use and how you say.
That's what rap is. Rap is rhythm and poetry. R-A-P. It's rhythm and poetry. It's mixed together. Right? Because any art done vocally always starts with poetry. Anything. So
why poetry for you? Why spoken word?
I just saw the impact. And I was rapping for years, and then I would write poetry from time to time, never looking at it like all through high school, winning writing contests, stuff like that, not even seeing it as, I just got that assignment done. But it was like I wrote something for my mother and my father, like for New Year's, like a Kwanzaa gift or something, and my mom, I just wrote it while I was at work, it was nice, and my mom called me crying.
Because how it affected her.
And then my father, he just came up to me. He didn't say a word. He just came up to me and just hugged me. I was just like, because I gave both of them a copy. And now to this day, I read that poem and I'm like, wow, I wrote that? Like, so the impact, I saw it. And the message is not, for me, it's through me.
Wow.
That's how I see it with poetry.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Call us. We're talking about poetry, specifically African-American poetry today on Another View. And I found out, Tim, unbeknownst to me, that this is National Poetry Month when we set this date.
Amen. I thought that's why you did it. But
there we go.
Yeah, I thought that's why you did it. I thought, she's right in the month.
Nice.
See, I learned a lot. And that's the one thing I love about this show, because I learned just like my audience learns. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. When did you start writing, Tim?
Well, I always liked to write. Even when I was a little boy, I liked to write, but mostly I was writing stories, little stories, crazy stories about invasions from other planets and stuff like that. It's true. It's real. I still have those little notebooks.
Nice.
And so that was, so I thought, in addition to being a professional football player, that I would be a novelist. That's what I thought. If you'd asked me when I was 15 what I was going to do, I'd have said, I'm going to play football and then write novels in the off season, which made sense to me, but I realized it's kind of crazy. But in college, took a workshop that was half fiction and half poetry, and I went in there thinking, well, I really like the stories, but the poetry thing, after that was it. I heard what poetry could do, and I thought, okay, that's it. I'm on. And so I was about 19.
And that's when you'd made the decision you were going to do that full time?
I wanted to be a poet. Well,
wow.
I mean, full time, I had to have a job, But but that was what I was going to be doing with a lot of my free time, trying to figure out how to write poems, how to make them snap.
So your latest book is called Fast Animals?
Yes, indeed.
You want to read something for us?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'll read something. Okay, I'm trying not to read something too long.
Okay, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay,
that's fine.
All right. This is called Dolores Jeps, and Dolores Jeps was a girl that many of the fellas in my neighborhood had like wild crushes on. She was just overly fine, and
overly fine.
and so I make one mention of a friend of mine in this poem. His name is Terry. Otherwise, I think everything is clear. Dolores Jeps. It seems insane now, but she'd be standing soaked in school day morning light, her loose leaf notebook flickering at the bus stop, and we almost trembled at the thought of her mouth filled for a moment with both of our short names. I don't know what we saw when we saw her face. But at 15, there's so much to believe in, that a girl with sunset in her eyes, with a kind smile and a bright blue miniskirt softly shading her bare thighs, really could be the goddess. Even the gloss on her lips sighed, "Kiss me, and you'll never do homework again." Some Saturdays, my ace, Terry, would say, "Guess who was buying T-berry gum in the drugstore on Stinton?" And I could see the sweet epiphany still stunning his eyes. And I knew that he knew, that I knew, he knew, I knew. Especially once summer had come and the sun stayed up till we had nothing else to do but wish and wonder about fine sisters in flimsy culottes and those hot pants James Brown screamed about. Crystal Berry, Diane Ramsey, Kim Graves, and her. This was around 1970. Vietnam to the left of us, black Muslims to the right. Big afros all over my Philadelphia. We had no idea where we were, how much history had come before us, how much cruelty, how much more dying was on the way. For me and Terry, it was a time when everything said maybe, and maybe being blinded by the beauty of a 10th grader was proof that, for a little while, we were safe from the teeth that keep chewing up the world. I'd like to commend my parents for keeping calm, for not quitting their jobs or grabbing guns, and for never letting up about the amazing, quote, "so many doors open to good students," unquote. I wish I had kissed Dolores Jeps. I wish I could have some small memory of her warm and spicy mouth to wrap these hungry words around. I would like to have danced with her, to have slow cooked to a slow song in her sleek toffee arms, her body balanced between the Temptations' 5 voices and me, a boy anointed with puberty, a kid with a B average and a cool best friend. I don't think I've ever understood how lonely I am, but I was closer to it at 15 because I didn't know anything. My heart so near the surface of my skin, I could have moved it with my hand.
Wow. Wow. Didn't it just transport you right back? You can see her standing on the corner. I mean, and how you weaved in also the feeling of what was going on during that time and the thing about your parents and thanking them for. That's just wow. Tim, I read in an article that you did with John Henry Doucette, you said that English is my instrument, my primary instrument. And I watched you read this, and I need to describe this for our audience listening, because your whole body gets into you have a rhythm, you move, even though you're sitting in the chair, there's movement there. What is that about for you?
Well, if I was a saxophonist, I would treat the sax the way I treat English. I mean, the words are notes, it's the same principle, and so you very rarely see sax players standing like a statue. It's like a statue, And so because the music becomes part of your body, it becomes your body is part of the instrument, And so when I think about English, it's the same way. When I construct a poem, when I build, poem line by line and word by word, to me it's a kind of singing, and singing necessarily is rhythmic. And if I sing, I'm using my body, and so reading for me is the same.
When you write, do you search for a word how do I want to say this? Do you look for words that rhyme? Sometimes they rhyme, sometimes they don't. Most of yours don't, as a matter of fact.
I'm a free verse writer for the most part.
But do you find yourself looking up words or saying, I'd rather use... do you keep the thesaurus right
No.
beside you? I mean, or does it all just come from inside?
After a while, I think, if you read a lot and you work with words a lot, you just have a pretty substantial working vocabulary in your head.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so, for the most part, when I'm doing word searches, I'm doing them in my head. So, for example, if I had some rough drafts with me, you'd see, like, I'll have a word in a poem that I'm working on, I'll circle it, and then I'll write 5 or 6 words next to it that I think mean something similar but may sound differently or have different connotations. Mm-hmm. So if I'm stuck on a word, I'll work that way. But for the most part, it's all out of my head. Now, if I'm doing something like more risky with the definition, I will look it up and make sure I'm not overstepping the real possibilities of the word. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's mostly in my skull at this point. I mean, I've lived a long time, read a lot of poems, and so I have lots of words in my head. So I don't need to add anything else right now, I don't suppose.
Remica, is it to say you're a little bit younger than Tim? We can say that.
I guess so.
But you have those words in your head also? What are your tools, I guess is what I'm asking.
Absolutely, but that was such an interesting question. It has nothing to do with age, fine sir. But I am a little more tied to, when you say that, I mean, I really, as a kid, I loved the dictionary. Like I read it like it was a book. I would go through and say, like it was a novel. I would say, okay, today, A through J. And I would look for words that I didn't know. And even today, my kids hate to see me coming for homework because I'm like, let's get the dictionary and the thesaurus. So I do use the thesaurus and the dictionary quite a bit, but mostly for the same reasons that Tim is saying. I'm looking for connotation in a word as much as I'm looking for meaning. Mm-hmm. So my first draft, I think of myself as kind of a lightning strike writer. I write immediately what comes. But in revision, and I am a strident revisionist, I probably do maybe 20, 30 revisions
So
of
when
each
do
poem.
you say, okay, this is it? What is there something that feels in your gut that you say, okay, that's it? Is that...
Absolutely. When I have said what I'm trying to say in the best possible way that I can in that moment. Now, I recognize that in 5 years, I should be a better wordsmith and I should be able to write a better poem. But in that moment, if I say, all right, this is as close as I can possibly get to what I'm trying to convey in this moment, then I'm fine. I let the poem go. And that takes longer than, that sometimes takes longer than others depending on the
Okay,
poem.
so your latest book is, thank you, What We Ask of Flesh. And can you read us a poem?
Sure. The book is all about flesh and spirit, and it starts with a lot of biblical poems, but at the end it goes back to me and kind of how we transition and make these segues between our fleshly lives and beyond that. Okay. This is Will and Testament. Strip the pictures from the walls. Send these with me. I won't be able to open my eyes if they are sewn shut, but I may be able to feel, to patch the decomposing pieces when I am called to wake. Cremate me. Do it quickly, without fanfare, unless this troubles my mother. If she can't stand the thought of not seeing me slick and stiff in a prettied up box, give her what she wants. Even in death, there are sacrifices. If there is marching down to the family plot, I'd like to be with Grandmama, near Granddaddy, at the edge of the cemetery by the highway off Grace Street, as good a place as any to lie. Once my uncle has spun a seasoned prayer, I want the road trod back with bomba and brass, percussion and pyre. Trust the wind to wind up bodies and hands to spark fire. Send up celebration, marching song wide with arc and bellow, feathered hats lifted, handkerchiefs waving, then cast away. A bitter-sweet opus, clamor and revelry, carrying me from the long road of this boneyard city past mama, past grace, on through to any other side.
Oh, that was beautiful. You're going to make me cry. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what
was
poetry
beautiful.
is. Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, and
Thank you so
again,
much.
I watch you. I watch your body language. I watch your eyes close.
Some of that probably comes from this joke. Yeah,
From
Tim
learning from
Seibles.
Tim
Yeah,
Seibles, 'cause
absolutely.
you
I
were one
studied
of
with
his
Seibles,
students,
yeah.
right?
And also, it is about the way you inhabit what you consider your tool. And I think we all do that. We're all really big gesturers. And I think for me, the readers and the poets that I admire the most, the work is as physical and emotional off the page as it is on the page. So that's why I think maybe, we're so strident about really moving the words through us physically.
I want to tell our callers we will get to you. I know our lines are just everybody wants to talk to you, but I want everyone to have an opportunity to hear you all's craft first. Okay, Godchild.
Yes,
let's
ma'am.
hear some spoken word.
Break it down.
This piece I wrote not too long ago. I started it when I was in California with the Hampton Roads Youth Poets and doing our competition, and just a wave, just being around all those young poets, like all that week. It was just like it just came out one day. I just started on like 5 different pieces and finished like 4 of them. Still got to finish that last one, but this one keeps coming to mind. And it's called Talk on Water. And it's just losing yourself in what you love doing, no matter what it is. So from my lane, it's this. Poets, lose your mind. Let it fall into the page. Plant your feet until you become part of the stage. Become a vessel, unrecognizable to your own self, to the point that even your mother is skeptical, thinking that you have to be someone else. I mean, be what you're doing. Misplace yourself on purpose. Be the embodiment of out of body on surface until your epidermis matches your inner working. See, you have to get out to get in. I mean, you have to get in to get out. I mean, whatever way you're going, just choose a different route. Just make sure you don't know where you're going, because there is no destination. It's only a journey, and the journey is eternity, trying to find forever within a few minutes. Seemingly like I get older after every sentence, but right like periods don't exist. Well, only ones by women. Be so into what you're into that you become the utensil and people eat off you. Food for thought, rather thought for food. That way they'll never be full. That's manner and grammar. Questions become inadequate for answers. You go in without an entrance or exit. A backwards dyslexic actually project mental calisthenics, making your synapses flex. Rapid eye movement while wide awake. Avatar state. Making the words that lay heavy on your heart levitate, because what you have to say has weight. Thoughts are things. All things come from thoughts, so by that logic, if I think hard enough, I could actually conjure something up. I mean, freestyle creation with or without mics. Acoustics are translucent. Sound touches light and bends sight right in front of eyes. Metamorphosize, shape shift, make your expression so expressive that it actually gives the crowd a facelift. See, you didn't know you were genetically predisposed for this. You just had to be introduced to it, and as soon as you were, kismet. A predestined prerequisite, what seems impossible becomes effortless. That's when word actually becomes flesh. Bones dressed in loose leaf like you bleed, ink tantric speech. Knees weak but still able to stand up for what you speak. All you are is thought put in shell. A masterpiece in a frame so frail, like just imagine if Goosebumps were Braille. If you can feel me, it's not hard to tell. If you look at me, it's Morse code as well, because only with your hands and your eyes you can read or spell the unlifted veil. I'm so much in my zone that it feels like home. And that's exactly the moment when I started this poem.
Wow. I've got to explain to the audience, as we're sitting here, I'm looking at Tim and Remica's face while you're speaking. Tim, what were you thinking?
Oh, well, I'll
you
try
just
and
had to
keep it
smile
simple.
and
I'll
you
try and
were
keep it simple. Okay, I'll try and keep it simple. First of all, that Godchild keeps all that in his head.
Right.
Yes.
That
He
by
had
itself,
no paper in front of
that
him.
by itself just trips me out all the time. But I've seen him do all kinds of stuff like that. That's one thing. But then the second thing, of course, was the grace of the sentences themselves. What he's saying. I mean, just laying it down. And just a way that I would love to be able to, but I do not have that particular talent. So I just think, man, that's what I was smiling because I thought,
What were you thinking, Remica?
I got stuck on the line. Manna is grammar. That was fierce. I mean, and so I just.
And
I
see, the
just
one for
think
me was
it's so-
Goosebumps is Braille.
Right. That came later. But that came.
I was like, wow.
The poem, I got stuck. I was like, oh, that is.
I was going to leave the studio. I was like, what's the point? What's the point? Let me get out of here.
Right. I mean,
I do have to ask you one question, Godchild, and I wonder, do you get this, where there are people, and I'm wondering if it may be generational, but who say, I don't know what you just said. I can't understand you because of the rhythm and the way that the words are used. It's the same complaint that people say about rap and about hip hop. I'm not going to listen to that because I can't understand you. Right. What do you say to them about that? How do they open up their minds so that they can?
It becomes to a point where it's an acquired taste to some people, and it's just like becoming I know there's people out there, listeners or just connoisseurs, being able to listen to it and follow. But I would just say just open yourselves to it, because this is like the one catalyst that I know of that I could go anywhere, because rap has such a stigma, and they seeing it as how it is on the radio and on TV. But I know some very good lyricists that are out there that are, their lyrics are in a positive direction, and they're about, really writing songs and really. So I just try to use that.
And if I could follow up on that, I think also that the whole thing, the whole world of, I mean, the thing that's cool about what he's doing is that since he's drawing on both the hip-hop culture as well as poetry, it's like there's a whole realm, this is maybe slightly off the subject, there's a whole realm of people who can only hear what you're doing,
right?
Who can't hear what I'm trying to do.
That's right.
And it reaches so many people. And it's somebody who's like, yo, I don't like poetry, but I like what you do.
But I like what you do.
I'm like, come on, man.
And you have to realize generationally that's something that they're going to gravitate to. We're a fast paced, and I say we, meaning Godchild and I, and then those younger than us. Those who were born of and in the hip hop cultural movement. We're a fast moving, fast listening, and really, everybody talks about the short attention span, but that's the way that you keep our attention. So you have to not only work well with words, the word play, right, which he does all the time, which is what catches our ear. But also they process information very quickly. That's just the way we're naturally bred to do things now. So
and also if you've been listening to hip hop a lot, then you're used to
yes, you're used to listening to that bass.
But I was gonna say also, and I know you have other things to ask, but I mean, people, you were talking about the acquired taste, but there's so many people who don't like jazz for the same reason. They don't know jazz. They don't know it. So if you start listening, you think, well, let me check something out. You find out, hey, that's pretty good. And maybe that's pretty good. And you realize you may not like all jazz, but you don't like all of anything.
Exactly.
But you start to love certain aspects of it, and that's how your tastes grow.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about poetry with poets Tim Seibles, Remica Bingham, and Godchild. And our phones are lit up, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Nehemiah joins us from Newport News. Hi, Nehemiah. You're on the air.
Hello. How are you?
Doing good. What's your question?
Yeah, my question was, I guess, geared towards Godchild.
Okay.
I myself am a fan of old school hip hop and R&B. In particular, I find Tribe Called Quest and Big Will Planet, still to this day very, very fun to listen to. I just kind of want to know why has the hip hop culture and the rap culture gravitated towards more demoralizing and futile lyrics. I mean, that really don't represent the vast majority of people of color.
Okay, let's let him answer. And thanks for the call, Nehemiah. Go ahead.
I just was just having a conversation online about this the other day. It's the companies.
You think it's the commercialization of the industry?
It's the companies. Because real hip hop is still out there. It's just how it's presented now, and this is not hip hop. This is foolery, tomfoolery, if you will. And
is that because you say the message has changed? It's the nature of the message.
It's I would say it's more like psychological warfare. Because you hear these repeated messages. I was talking to some young men at a Boys and Girls Club, and we just went through like a radio stations. I'm not gonna say a radio stations like early morning programming, and it was all different songs, all different artists, but the same content. It was about spending money frivolously, promiscuity, violence against each other, like just over and over and over again. And like, you keep hearing stuff like that, mantras like that to a beat, that gets in your head. Even if you don't like the song, you ever broke out and just start singing a song you don't even like?
Because you keep hearing that beat in your head.
Over and over again in all these different forms. So, that adds on, because when I was coming up with hip hop, like he was saying, those groups right there are real positive. I remember Public Enemy was like #1 Billboard Top 40, and these are cats that had beef with the government. They had beef with, the media. They had real, and they had messages. And then I had NWA on the other side. So it was just like, I had balance. I had both. Even with some of the stuff that NWA did, it was some of the lyrics were still, them cats was actually good at what they were doing. These cats are nowhere near. I sound like an old man right there talking about hip hop, and I feel like that. And I never thought I would be like that. To be, hey, I'm just let them do their thing. This is the next generation. This is how it's supposed to be. But nah, that's garbage.
Okay, Remica joins us from Hampton. Hi, Remica, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air.
LaKenya, I think is her name.
Is it LaKenya? I am so sorry, LaKenya.
Hi. Actually, I'm a former student of Tim Seibles, great admirer of poetry, and I'm glad that y'all are having this show.
Thank you.
My question is, after listening to what was said, why do y'all think that poetry gets the least recognition of other genres, and what is it that we can do to change that?
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, I think part of what we're doing right now on Barbara's show is part of how we change it. We let people know this is poetry, because a lot of people gave up on poetry in high school or junior high school, and they closed the book.
I tell you what it was for me, haiku.
Right. Oh. Well, but haiku, if you once you study it, I won't go long to it. It's beautiful and clear and powerful.
And
that's another story, though. We won't get into it. It is
another story, but it went right.
But that's the thing. But that's what happens. And if a teacher really knows what he or she is doing, you would never have felt that way about haiku. But so many people teach who don't themselves love the words. They don't. And I don't want to get on the high horse, but I taught English in high school for a long time, and I met English teachers who were just, it was a job. They weren't in love with words. They weren't in love with poetry. They weren't in love with it. And so that's part of what we're trying to do by having people hear us, is to recognize that poetry is relevant. And poetry's popularity has grown quite a bit. This is a golden age.
Is it the resurgence now?
Because of spoken word. Partly. And also partly because, the MFA programs generating a more interest in a reading public for poetry. But yeah, I'm very excited about where poetry's headed, actually.
Remica, you want to respond to that also?
I agree with Tim. I mean, the more that we talk about poetry and the more that you expose, especially young people, to the vast arena that is poetry. I mean, all of our work is very different, even with just 3 poets in this room. So imagine if you're looking at not only contemporary poets, but poetry through time. There is so much. I tell my students all the time, if you are thinking about it, that somebody has already written a poem to speak to that experience. You, however, can write a poem to speak to your own experience. But there's absolutely it's such a vast genre. There's so many different people doing it in a million different ways. So you just have to find your entry point into it. Best way to do that, expose people to it. Don't be afraid of it.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Those are the numbers to call to join our conversation today. We're talking about African American poetry, and we have Sansaray calling from Norfolk. Hi, Sansaray, you're on the air.
Hi. I wanted to say hi to Remica and tell her that I love her.
I love you too. This is my daughter. Hi, baby.
Here's Michael.
Okay. Hi, boo. Do you have a question about poems?
Nope, just wanted to say we love you.
We love you too. See, this is what you do. You get your children to call in to the radio show. I hope the house is clean. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you all for calling. We appreciate that. Well, at least we know they're listening. We know we got two people listening, right?
Sweet kids. They haven't been badgered enough with this poetry stuff yet. They're still on board.
Now, do you have a little poet, an emerging poet in your home?
You know?
Can you tell?
I have little readers in my home, and that's what I'm really excited about. Their father and I are insistent on making our house a reading household. So whatever they love, my daughter actually introduced me to a fantastic fiction writer, Christopher Paul Curtis, who writes for, young African American kids. And I read a lot of YA fiction, and we read poems. And the only poems that they're really fascinated with right now are the poems about them that'll be in the next book. So they're like, are we famous yet?
Wow.
What happened? Did you read the poem about me? My son he asked me the other day, you're still talking about that Well We Ask a Flesh book? I'm not in that. So
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Vicky joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Vicky. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. A couple of questions. One, with regard to music, Barbara, you were stating that, as you're watching the poets, you can see their body movement. And, there are a lot of times when you go to settings, you will hear music behind the poet. Does that ever distract you, or do you prefer to have music behind you? And then the second question is, when does a poem not become a poem anymore? When you just start writing and it becomes so much, does it turn into, do you call it then a paper? Because it's not what we think of poems as being short or shorter.
That's an interesting question, Vicky. Thanks so much for that.
Yeah. Lastly, if you get a chance, and I want to send you the link, check out a poem called "I Will Wait for You" by Janelle, which is really interesting because that poem is really great for single women. So thank you for the time, and I'll take my responses off the air.
Thank you, Vicky, for the phone call.
Well,
okay, Tim.
I've performed when I lived in Texas. There were three dudes I used to perform with all the time. One guy was on stand-up bass, another brother played trumpet, and I had a percussionist. And that was one way of getting into a certain place with poetry, but the vast majority... That was
kind of like the beatnik thing?
Well,
was that it, or it's a little different
maybe
than that?
The beats were more like, they were improvisational poets. They would just say, play something, and then they just go.
They just go.
I've never done that. I don't have the courage to do that. I think I'd make some pretty bad choices. But I like that. But I also like the way the words lay against the silence, too, because the language has its own music and its own way of moving into your ear. So I probably tend toward the silence, but music can be beautiful with poems. It just depends.
Speaking of that, as we were talking about when you write, if a word doesn't sound right musically with the rest of the poem, will you change that word to make that happen?
I mean, you're always thinking about a marriage of the sound of the language and the meaning. So, so you're always thinking about those things working in tandem. So if a word has the right meaning and the sound is really clumsy in the line, I will try to find an equivalent. But the most important thing to me is to say the thing I really mean. So if I sacrifice some sonic loveliness to get the word that means the thing I need to say most, I would sacrifice the sound before I'd sacrifice
the word is more
the
important.
meaning. Yes.
Got you. Remica, music behind your work?
I've done it once or twice. I use music in my poems. I sing lines in poems often. So I think, though, for me, sometimes I need to hear exactly what's going on in the work. So the words are more solemn to me than what's playing behind. So it's always as a backdrop, at least for me, if we do it that way.
Gotcha.
Well, I'm a recording artist also. I have 3 different CDs out. So I like with, when the studio fitting my words to the beat or letting, they produce something behind it. And then live, I've done that a few times. Matter of fact, every Wednesday night with the Fuzz Band, I do that. They'll play a beat like while I'm behind the keyboard player. He'll just start. Yeah, he'll just start.
So does he follow you as you start your spoken word?
Well, we kind of got like this kind of like thing where he'll play this certain groove, and I'll just go into it, and the rest of the band just adds on to it. And that's an open mic I do every Wednesday night.
Oh, okay.
Fuzzy
And where is that?
It's at the Palace on Plume.
Palace on Plume.
Yeah, every Wednesday night. Fuzzy Wednesdays.
So all those aspiring spoken word artists and other artists can just come out and check it out, right?
Sign the list, will be a witness.
Okay. Ed joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Ed. You're on the air.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Wonderful program, folks. I just tuned in just in time to hear Godchild recite his poem, and it made me think of a couple things. First of all, how powerful words really are, and I'm just really into educating everybody about that just by itself. But that also, it reminded me, hearing that poem reminded me how our focus determines our direction. And that even quantum physics now is showing that when we have a thought or an expression, it creates an actual electromagnetic field in which that thought or expression can be manifested through action or any other intention. So I just wanted to bring that out. I'm learning a lot about that, and poetry seems to be a wonderful vehicle for, creating an idea and a thought which creates a field for that to actually take place. So how it affects our consciousness and our world. It's just a powerful thing. So I really appreciate what you all are doing and making sure people hear this.
Thank you, Ed, so much for that call.
Yes.
Gotcha, you want to respond?
That's what the poem was, mostly about, was just, embodying, what you're doing and get lost in it. Sometimes I'll do a set, say it's like 5 poems, and I forget number 2 and 3. Like I forget the poem. Like what poem did I just do? Like I'm so gone off of
you're
what I'm
so
doing
in the moment.
Because you do a repetitive physical motion over and over. Like talking is a physical motion. So it's like if I said this poem like 100 times, and it's like I'm just saying it, and it just like my mind just goes somewhere else. I'm thinking I'm totally gone, and all of a sudden I'm finished, and the crowd clap. What happened? Oh man!
Wow!
Okay.
Oh my goodness!
And that's what I was saying with that type piece. Like I love that poem. Right.
We only have a little while left, and I want to leave time for you guys to read another poem. So let's see if we can get through these calls. Jennifer joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Jennifer. You're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to make a comment. I used to teach in high school, and one of the things that I used to try to do was play music in between class, or have the kids have something to listen to when they're walking into the classroom, exposed to different things. And one of the things I never had was poetry on audio, like you could buy music. And I was wondering if your guests have ever thought of just funneling that directly into the educational system, because teachers are hungering and thirsting for things for their students to listen to.
Okay, all 3 of them are nodding their heads, so I'm going to get a response from each of them. I'm going to start with you, Remica.
I think there are some things. I also, I play poems and poets reading their poetry for my class the same way that I play music. One of the books that I sent over for you, Barbara, is put together by Nikki Giovanni. It's 100 best African American poems.
The 100 best African American poems, and Miss Remica Bingham is included in this book.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. But there's also a CD. Stop. There's also a CD that's included in that book, and then there are also other CDs. You know, there's a fantastic CD that my girlfriend Matilda Cox at Princess Perry and I, all writers in the area, we used to play this CD of Martinez Spada reading his poems, you know, like it was music when we were on road trips. So there are different things available for you if you're interested in playing poems for your students as well.
Okay, Tim?
Oh, yeah, I think it's really an important thing. I want to record some stuff, in fact. I just think for a lot of people, hearing a poem is the first way to reach them. And reading, some people love to read and they're right there, but hearing really is an important way of introducing young people or not so young people to poetry.
He said that for my benefit.
Oh man, some poems should be read, some poems should be said. You know, some poems it should be heard in order to get them. But it's plenty of recording artists like myself that have to play the tracks like over and over. I work with Had the Rose U Poets, and they have a whole CD out, mixtape with all young poets up there doing their thing. It's an incredible album. Ma'am, you can go to www.twpthemovement.org.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about something else that they have coming up soon in just a little while in the show. Let's take our last call. Dave is calling us from Suffolk. Hi, Dave. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm glad to hear Godchild and the others out there, and I think maybe WHRF could maybe make it a regular thing. That'd be great.
Dave.
Thanks for the call, Dave. We appreciate that. So I want to ask each of you to perform or read another poem for us. And Godchild, I think I'm going to start with you this time. Is that cool?
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I'm going to ask Lisa to tell us how much time we have left so you guys can kind of pick out lengthwise. We got about 5 minutes left, so got to do something quick so all three of us can get in.
Only 5 minutes. Wow.
You want me to start? Want me to start with Tim?
Yeah.
Okay, Tim, you want to read one of yours?
Okay, let me read. I'll read a short poem.
Y'all are tripping.
I'm sorry. I apologize. That wasn't right. I'll read this poem. It's a meditation. And it's just called Edge. Edge. Traffic. Solitude. The city. Walking around. So many of us lost in it. Is love the secret nobody tells? In a small park, daylight pulled its knife, and a tree moved toward me. What are you doing here? I remembered then. I lit my eyes, which had gone out.
Wow. You know, sometimes Tim, when you read, you're just speechless because you just have to take a moment to just kind of absorb it.
Yeah, he cheats too because he has that voice.
You know, and that's
That's my mom and dad's voice. I don't have any power.
Remica, you want to read one? We got about 4 minutes. 4 minutes left, so let's go.
I'll read something really short from my first book conversion. I had just moved here. I'm from Phoenix originally, so this is something that happened to me spending time on the beach. Visions of the Messiah on Virginia Beach. Dreadlocked and beaming, he reminded me of Jesus, fingering the heel and arch of a new disciple, when I lifted my sandy foot onto his thigh and he began cleaning it with a sun-drenched towel, sliding his lips past the weak flesh behind my knee. He christened my calf. Then gave a nod to Lazarus, his friend with cornrows and a boogie board who rose to spread the word.
Wow.
Go to the beach.
I go to the beach. I tell you what, I have to tell you that at least my producer was going, oh my goodness, she's fanning herself.
That's right. That was nice. That was nice.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, Godchild.
Since you said something about haikus,
Okay.
I have a haiku for you.
Okay. Oh boy.
And I love haiku. This is my first form I ever wrote with. So, love at first sight. Like I never used my eyes until I saw you.
Wow, that was gorgeous. I got that one.
There it is.
I got that one.
Yeah,
That was
good stuff.
perfect.
That's right.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Revelation.
There you go.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir.
And confirmation.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
right.
That is incredible. If there was one thing that you all could tell people about either your work or about the genre or about poetry, what would it be? Tim, I'm going to start with you.
Right.
Well, I would just say I would just like to see people, all colors, everywhere, think very seriously about the possibilities of words. I mean, we live with language all the time, and we take it for granted. But as you've heard from my companions, language is magic. It's a means of conjuring. And I think when we embrace that, it changes the way we live.
That, Remica?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. And also, I started writing poems when I was really young, maybe in the 5th grade, but it is the only thing that I found that helps me pinpoint emotion. And I write poems to question, not necessarily to answer. But if something is plaguing you, if you are not sure how to make your way through it emotionally, poetry might be a good art form for you to start thinking about using as a way to process that, if merely for yourself. But otherwise, reading other people's poems helps you process the world in the same way.
Gotcha.
To take a quote from one of my favorite poets, got his book, and he wrote in it, and it's keep the torch lit. Tim Seibles told me that. I've been doing that ever since, just being a herald for my cause and going where poetry isn't, recruiting, getting them, letting them know that, express yourself, even if it's through this, if it's through anything, but get out there and do it. Please keep the torch lit for other people that's coming in.
When will you be performing again? Or where's there poetry? Is there something happening tonight?
Yes, tonight, actually, I'm doing this show called Conversation Over Cocktails. It's at 3497 Holland Road. It's a place called Taipan. Yeah, it's a place called Taipan. It's open forum, open mind, like similar to this. Like we write questions down on cue cards and put them in we go in.
We'll put that information on our website so that people can come in. You all, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And we will be right back. Welcome back. Time now for things to view and do in Hampton Roads.
You will be my Saturday love.
WHRO, in partnership with Hampton University, invites you to a free screening of the Ken Burns documentary, The Central Park 5. It's this Thursday, April the 11th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at the Hampton University Scripps Howard Auditorium. Yours truly will serve as moderator for the panel discussion with author Dwayne Dawkins and journalist Earl Caldwell. The event is free, but seating is limited. To register, visit whrro.org/Central Park 5. And since poetry is on our mind today, tell the young poet in your life about the Hampton Roads Youth Poetry Slam Festival. It's open to any youth ages 13 to 19 in the Hampton Roads area. The Peninsula Qualifying Slam is at the Downing Gross Cultural Arts Center on Saturday, April 20th from 5 to 7. Call 747-2679 to find out more. Next week, it's the Another View Roundtable. Lots of discussion, lively discussion about issues that you care about. For producer Lisa Godley, audio engineer Perry Smith, Kendall Hairston, who answered our phones, I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View. And don't forget to get out there and read some poetry.